Welcome back to the show, everyone. We've got a update directly from the CEO of Colossal Order. Here's the quote. "The biggest regret that we have is modding support is not yet available for the game." So this is an admission from the CEO, Marina Halikainen of Colossal Order, of course, on the state of Cities Skylines 2. It is a game right now dealing with the fallout of essentially the content creator ecosystem. I don't want to say revolt, because a lot of them are very nice and reasonable, but they're definitely facing very real problems. When you actually look at the player counts in Steam, that's very clear. We're in a situation where positive change cannot happen fast enough. As for Colossal Order, what they basically have to do right now is just batten down the hatches and try to bear the storm of criticism while actually making the content and fixing up the game. It's a really, really rough situation, and it really is on both sides, because from the side of the community, well, Cities Skylines is kind of the only franchise that's doing the thing that they want. Obviously, RIP SimCity. So the user base is bleeding out, the content creators are getting less views, many are even moving back to Cities Skylines 1. This is all just shaking the very foundations of this franchise, a franchise that means a hell of a lot to a lot of people. And, well, if you want to make some use of your newly found city building time, today's sponsor. You and your fellow viewers at Bellular.ghost.io. Seriously, you guys are helping us out a lot, and in return for your support over there, we've got Loading Screen, our daily newsletter that keeps you up to date on everything going on, early access to our videos, early access to our research reports. We've also set it up so there is a free trial whenever you sign up there as well, so you can have a little bit of a gander around to see what's up. It is the single best way that you can support our channel. It seriously makes a massive difference, and even just seeing you guys chat and hang out over at the Members Lounge Discord, honestly, that's just really cool. And by the way, for that, you get your invite right after you sign up. So thank you for your support, and with that said, let's go. Another month, another trip to Colossal Order's CEO's blog, and some updates on the state of the game. In this case, a lot of fan questions about, well, content creator revolt, and basically people want a general statement of intent from the company. There is a lot of ambiguity. People are kind of worried. And they're also worried that, well, what happens when the pace of the updates slows down? And then they get into a situation where future updates only really come alongside bits of DLC that are paid. That's obviously a pretty bad look, even if it is one that is mostly driven, you could maybe imagine, by economic realities. Anyway, Colossal Order are, for the most part, responding quite humbly to this situation. Ultimately, it's clear they know they cannot just magically deliver on content. They can't just wave a wand and fix this. There is an absolute shit ton of work. So now what they need to do is basically convince their audience to listen to them and to trust them. That is going to be bloody hard, because the audience basically feels, in many ways, kind of hoodwinked with this entire situation. Now, as I sort of said in our previous coverage of this, so much of this does appear to be the doing of Paradox, and since Cities Skylines 2 blew up in their face, they've been way more willing to delay projects, right? So clearly they've kind of learned the lesson that quality matters. Of course, though, from a consumer, whether it's the fault of Colossal Order or the fault of Paradox, for many people, well, they just want their city builder, and they haven't got it, and that's the bit that's going to matter to them. Now, there's two main places we can go to see how the CEO's blog post has actually performed. On their own forums, it is quite a bit more positive, quite a bit more understanding. I think that makes a lot of sense. If you're on the developers forum, you probably care a little bit more about the developer. You can probably intuit some of those complications between Paradox and the dev. However, on the Steam forums, though, things have not been doing particularly good. There's, of course, content creators basically saying to their audiences, look, sorry, we just can't really cover this game. And to many people that might seem mercenary, but when you actually listen to what the content creators are saying, they are pretty real problems. Number one, in order to actually make a good experience for their viewers, they have to do a lot of work behind the camera. Because, the traditional Let's Play is a partially dead format. Now a lot of the Let's Plays are actually very heavily narrativized, heavily edited pieces of media. And of course, if you are fighting with bugs in your, effectively, what Cities Skylines 2 is for them, it's a storytelling tool. And the thing that the audience watch, That's the story they create. So if the tools that they're using to create that story are basically breaking all the time, that's a big problem. Another one is visuals. Well, when you only have so many visuals and you don't have the modding support, all your cities are going to look the same. And that's another thing that really hurts their ability to make content. So it's no wonder then that if you go onto Steam, you see all reviews are mixed. Recent reviews are mostly negative. So yeah, because of that, obviously they are responding to the pretty viral content creator concerns, along with this feedback. And basically, to outline that, they've shown everybody this as their process, right? With collecting feedback, going into design and vision, determining improvements, prioritizing and implementing, testing, reiterating, retesting, and then patching the game. So this is really, this is the sort of process that would usually be happening internally. If you think about, say, the whole concept of triage, right? Like, why was triage invented? What were the results that, they were trying to get with triage? Was that the Crimean War? Like way back, sort of late 1800s, might have been. Anyway, the point basically is you've got to deal with all of your different bugs and concerns, then you got to work out how to prioritize and execute on them. And this is where things are, for a game like this, extremely challenging. So what they have done is they've detailed a few smaller aspects that they've been able to fix already. This is things like improving pathfinding and line coloration for various transport options, which is good for core game playability, but they have recognized a lot of the core issues. One of them is economic transparency. I know people have been having some sort of inexplicable RSI behavior. That's, residential, commercial industry. And this is something that's quite challenging. Technically speaking, what the Cities Skylines 2 simulation is able to do is really quite impressive. The problem is, though, the way that it's tuned, the way that it's actually playing out, is not leading to gameplay. Because if you just have a bunch of numbers, it doesn't really matter how complicated the system is that produces those numbers. The thing that matters to the player is, well, what are these numbers? What can I do to change it? What tools do I have? And how impactful do my tools actually feel? So yes, you have a more detailed, complex simulation, but it's not actually driving core good gameplay. It's one of those things where actually a lot of the time a developer could make something perfectly, as realistic and all of that as possible. But the thing that actually might be a lot more fun to play is something that is, not realistic. That's kind of doing a few cheats, doing a few hacks here and there in order to make the gameplay feel impactful. And to me, the blame here is absolutely not on the developers, and that's one thing I want to make very clear. I have seen from my own position, other, people that I know that are heads of companies who have, who have publishing agreements, and, getting an extension to a game can be really hard. And again, for the sake of Paradox, and just to catch you up on the context, they had a really humongous loss with Lamplighters League. Lamplighters League, basically, it was expensive and it sold absolutely shag all, and it seems like it was tracking pre-release to sell absolutely shag all. So obviously, they didn't feel they could delay this game. The things that we're talking about here, right, about the transparency of the simulation, that's the sort of thing where the only way to actually fix that is to test and observe and playtest and polish and hone and refine and go on and on and on and on. Often what happens with publishers is they see, is this feature there? Is the box ticked? Because from the publisher's perspective, what they want to sell to you is a set of features in a marketable package. The problem is, though, what happens when you crack that package open? Often for the publisher, they're going to say, whatever, they've already bought the package. And this is exactly the problem that we've ran into here. The developers were not given the time they needed. They had to ship too early, and the result of shipping early is an overall massive sacrifice in efficiency, because instead of dealing with these problems in a controlled way as a part of a process that Colossal Orders like management, producers, etc. can actually do their goddamn jobs on, now all these problems are being felt by players. They've got to work out player feedback. It's a shit show. This is where we get into the downstream effects of this. Small fixes are easier to implement, right? Maybe a button doesn't work or a bit of UX isn't clear. Yeah, you can fix those things. The problem is, though, what happens when the core problems are deep in the core of the game with the core simulation. I mean, the person who fixes a button or changes the color of a UI element so that it's more clear, that's probably not the same person that's working on the core simulation. So, core simulation stuff, extremely hard to fix. The other stuff that's easier to fix, it has been tweaked and iterated on, but that then leads to the impression for viewers that the team are not working on the big important fixes to things like the simulation. And then it's been so long that they actually begin to worry, well, what happens if we only get these fixes along with helpings of DLC? So here's a little bit of a QA response from them. How do you plan to get out of this mess? What is in the works to fix Cities Skylines 2? What will you do to set things right for the disaster launch of Cities Skylines 2? That's what they had on their own blog. I can commend the transparency. They know it was a disaster. They know it's a mess. They know they need to fix it. And they have a team of 30 developers. And of course, of all of those developers, how many will be working in core simulation? I'm not exactly sure. Here's what they say to that point. We'd much rather be in a different position than we are at the moment, but we cannot change the past. This basically means our publisher shoved us here. We didn't want to do it. Brackets, we probably hate it as much as you do. Actually, I'd say they probably hate it even more than players do because, they had, years of their life's work thrown in the bin for money by greedy bastards. They go on to say, we're working very hard to catch up on the missing modding support, missing platforms, the content for the Ultimate Edition, and improving the performance and fixing bugs this year. The team is divided to work on different tasks, so we're seeing progress on all fronts, and while it might not feel fast enough, I can assure you we are all doing the best we can. Only time will tell if this is enough to turn things around. That is not something that you want to be saying to your community as a CEO, but you know what? False hope, that would just not be credible, so I do think that this was the correct play in terms of public messaging. Then that brings us to what's largely seen as the biggest problem here, which is the lack of mods, because they're only a team of 30 developers, but with modders, this game can have hundreds of developers, meaning the community can benefit from an absolute shit ton of assets, and of course not just assets, also like actual, mechanically impacting things. And that is what gives us the headline quote of today's video from Marina Halakainen, which is, the biggest regret we have is that modding support is not yet available for this game. Yeah. Now the team have been pretty clear on modding support here that they wanted it to be functioning from day one. They basically repeated their position that they believe fundamentally that mods improve games and should be available for free for all players. And that is why they spent pre-release time working with mod creators and essentially trying to detail how the mod tools were being designed to be a real comprehensive package. And what they're aiming for is amazing. Seriously, what's happened with mod tools is incredible. They will have code modding, maps, asset editing, have a bunch of sharing functionality, basically a set of full dev tools, right? This isn't like the Halo 3 Forge. Actually, look at Halo Infinite's Forge. My god, it's really impressive. But yeah, they're actually aiming for something really, really good. Of course, the problem is the damn game was forced out the door too early, meaning, this happened, and it can't be unhappened. And here's what they say to that. During the project, we faced and still continue to face technical difficulties that affect the speed and quality of development, especially performance. We simply ran out of time as the focus had to shift from modding support to all hands on deck to fix the performance. This work is still ongoing. Now, what I want you to imagine is, you talking with your manager at work, right? And maybe your manager at work is dealing with a client and your day is being absolutely ruined because the client has changed the requirements or the timeline or, isn't receptive to your feedback. That's the position that these developers will be in. Again, they knew all of this. And what I think about here is the lead up to this game where you had all of the content creators getting early access. And they were saying, even in this early access content, which ostensibly is promotional in nature, they were basically, in many cases, saying, yeah, watch out. This is not running well. These are a bunch of problems. I'm confused about the simulation. So they had to do firefighting in that, which of course robbed them of the time they needed to do things right. And you basically get into a downward spiral situation. What's the point in making mod tools if the core simulation isn't really working? Because it could actually be that there are assumptions about how your simulation is running, assumptions about, your UI, assumptions about just stuff that is the core of how the game works. If those assumptions change, but your modding tools haven't been made with those assumptions in mind. Now your modding tools will also have to be changed. So it's just that thing of you want to be doing these jobs in the right order. And of course, that is something fundamentally that Paradox and maybe Colossal Order leadership, who knows, something that was basically robbed from the frontline development team. So even if they did rush out mod tools, well, what happens when you've got, say, monthly updates that are rewriting fundamental aspects of the game? Will that just go and break a whole bunch of mods? And if that is reminding you of Baldur's Gate 3, well, tune in tomorrow, we're going to be talking about that situation as well. So overall, this is an unenviable position. They can't go silent and just get to work because they need the community feedback to identify the problem. You know, people always say there's like a triangle, right? You know, publisher, developer, community, and it's very hard to get all three of those things being happy. What Colossal Order need to do is just get them and the community, like, you know, as close together as they can, so that this is not an ongoing shit show. But I mean, it's already a foregone conclusion that it will be an ongoing shit show. And the thing is, they can't fix things faster than they already have, because if they could have done that, they probably would have already. There are reasons holding them back that we don't have transparency of, much like how we don't have transparency into the simulation with Cities Skylines 2. So in the same way that'll make a Cities player frustrated about the performance of their city economically, it will make a customer frustrated about the performance of the company, because to them, the company's a black box. They don't really know how it operates inside. And that just takes me back to the line from Marina. We'd much rather be in a different position than we are at the moment, but we can't change the past. They cannot. And ultimately, we're left in a situation where if they basically weren't pushed off a cliff and asked to, you know, build their airplane as they fell down, then maybe things would have been different. Maybe if they were allowed to frame this as an early access game and then have a cheaper price point, maybe the community sentiment, I mean, it would have been rough, but it may not have been this bad. But again, it does seem that shoring up financial performance is exactly what Paradox needed to do, given the, I think at the time for their decision-making, what would have been the impending big problem with Lamplighters League. So I suppose it's not like that would have happened. Yeah, so overall, look, hindsight is a very real thing, and I think this is a case where Paradox made a massive mistake. I mean, you cannot imagine a situation where the people working on this game, you know, working on the code, there's no universe in which they're not reporting up the chain saying, listen, boss, this is fucked. And their boss probably knows that too. And the CEO definitely knows that. Like, they all know it. But if the person who's giving you money says, sorry, that's how it is, then that's how it is. And the thing that I think a lot of people may not feel here, of course, you know, the context for us, we've done a full video game production with our publisher, Fellow Traveler. We had a great experience with Fellow Traveler. They were overtly saying to us, oh no, delay the game. Quality's the thing that matters, you know? But the way that is, you have milestones, right? And in order to get paid, you need to hit your milestone. That's basically the way that this thing works. So if Paradox says, no, you gotta launch here, well, from their perspective, what are they gonna do? Like, if ultimately Paradox in all levels of management just says, nope, the decision's been made, what are Colossal Order going to do? Just not pay their team? Just not hit payroll? I mean, again, I don't know what the financial situation exactly is for Colossal Order, but that's the kind of thing that you're dealing with. And even if it had nothing to do with the financial position of Colossal Order, ultimately, they're the developer. They're not the publisher. And that's something that we often forget here. We think that a developer should be the person that hits the go button on their video game. But the publisher is the person who has acquired the rights to that game, who has funded the development team, and ultimately has control over the publication schedule, marketing, and so on. So if your publisher just wants to say, nope, yeet it out now, like legally speaking, what the hell can you do? And I think that's the grim situation, fundamentally, we're dealing with right now. That is it. One thing you can do is check out boot.dev. Yeah, it's an awesome platform. I think coding's awesome. They're great. They're a great sponsor. It's a great way to support the channel as well. As an example, you know, you might notice cameras looking a bit better. We've made a few other little changes behind the scenes that's, I think, just making it easier to record content, easier to record it in a way that is better. So we're always trying to make this a better deal for you guys too. Okay, that's it for me. I'll see you tomorrow for Baldur's Gate 3. Check out Boot, and goodbye.